No, you'd be surprised. Don't serve trees. It was.
Okay, so lecture 20 or 19 we're at. If anybody needs to sign up with me for advising this week, this is a schedule I have. Does anybody want to see that? Pass it around. The times I have available. Most of you have a lot of time to get registered. You can't register till a week from Friday. So, but the sooner we get it done, the better off we are. Student success seminars. Anybody need any more forms? Let's see. So review sessions are on Mondays. Advising signups. That sheet is available there for anybody that's got to do that. We have a course here, DANS 200 for 2 credits, advanced nutrition. Does anybody have an interest in that as a spring class? It's an optional class at some point. Got one? Anybody else? Maybe 2? Anybody else? Okay. Lab this Wednesday, we'll be balancing rations for a dry cow. We'll go through the examples again. Bring your calculator, whatever form that is, whether it's on your phone or your laptop. Bring your laptop so you can access stuff from Brightspace. Dairy Club meeting next week. Exams a week from today. Should include maybe this lecture, maybe not. I'll find a logical break. So 11 through 19, labs 6 through 10 this week, when we'll take out feed ID is not part of the exam. Hay quality is not part of the exam. Sampling and ration balancing, all those things are either already tested or will be on the lab practical at the end. Commissioner Ball will be here to visit a week from Friday. So anybody to help Ryan on Thursday to get their second dry matter in? So questions from the class. When do we receive our extra credit that we earn for the class? I passed out the bunk silage one. If you didn't get one and you did participate in that, see me and we'll figure out what happened. What are Joe's rules? Joe's rules are a way of looking at how a cow manages itself. First priority, first rule, I'll take care of myself. Second rule, I will feed my calf. I will produce milk, however you want to say that. Third priority is I will have my next calf or I'll get pregnant again. So first priority for nutrients is take care of the self. Second priority in early lactation is feeding the calf. Third priority is getting pregnant for the next generation. So we take care of the regeneration we have before we move on. Fill empty vat. What does fill empty vat stand for? In essential amino acids, it stands, we take the letter of the 10 required, first letter of the 10 essential amino acids, and that's the mnemonic device we create. So phenylalanine, histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, tryptophan, valine, arginine, and threonine, I think are the 10 there. What would be a low NDF for a lactating cow? Anything under 25% of the total diet would be considered low. We have to be very careful once we get below that NDF. What are the limiting amino acids for our dairy cows lactating? Usually lysine and methionine. What is the best nutrient for a calf? It's hard to say what's the best, but certainly the most needed immediately is oxygen, followed by probably energy to get through the day. What does homofermentative bacteria do? They produce exclusively lactic acid. So they produce the most lactic acid per unit of carbohydrate. And with that, they lower the pH a whole lot faster. With lowering that pH faster, we get into the stable phase a whole lot quicker. So we have a preference for those bacteria to be present. What type of feed can a cow ferment? Well, it's kind of an oxymoron. If it's feed, a cow can ferment it. If it's not feed, we think of something like sawdust. A cow eating sawdust, they're not going to be able to ferment that. It's too unavailable in the short run. We need something that can ferment in the first 24 to 48 hours. Wood would be beyond that. We need fungus, and that takes a long time to get that. What is a forage that can screw up a dairy cow? Usually something that's got different factors in them, that either too much minerals of different types. You get out west, the forage, we'll get into this when we talk about minerals. Everybody knows General Custer. Battle of Little Bighorn. We will show you that he died of selenium toxicity, not the arrows or whatever bullets that he received in that battle. So we get into forages if they are carrying something that messes up our dairy cow. So some sort of organic compound, cyanide or anything related to that. There's the loco weed out west that drives cows crazy. And then the minerals, if we have too much or too little of minerals, bad things can happen as well. Can a cow eat something too much and it change the color of the milk? Yep. We don't usually run into those things when normal cow diets, but there are things you could add to the diet that move with the fat through the body. And if they move with the fat and they have a color associated with them, they're going to end up in the milk. They're going to color the milk. You've got the golden Guernsey milk. They don't process vitamin A as well as they could. Besides milk yield, does BMR versus conventional, I assume, or traditional corn silage have a effect on overall performance or digestible ability? So you've got milk yield. It's probably easier on the rumen, less acidosis. You're going to have increases in intake, so you can fit more in the cow and change some things that way. Higher forage diets makes the cow healthier. Those are some of the benefits for the cow of BMR corn silage. Do changing seasons impact nutritional needs? They're going to certainly change the calories that we need to keep the animal at 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So the calories we need to get through that. You're going to have, and we'll talk about the vitamins, depending on if they're available or not, how they might be provided. changing seasons. Yeah, we'll stick with those two. Would putting bunk or plastic on the walls of the bunk and overlapping with the top lead to less silage loss? Yes, it would, if you can fill the silo without ripping that plastic. That's the hard part. We've tried that in the past. We end up ripping it with the blade on the truck packing tractor or the tires. And if you're ripping that plastic, you've just defeated the whole purpose of putting it there. If you could keep it intact, yes, it would be wonderful if you could, but we don't seem to be able to do that. So Mike has gone away. He says it's just not worth the expense. If we can't keep it from having holes, we can't, it doesn't do what it's supposed to. Most important feed for a mature cow, probably all of it. What would happen if we were to mix all the feeds together in one and feed it to the cattle for a week? We could certainly, and there are a lot of places that'll feed for 2 days. It's a lot better in the winter and a lot better if you have dry feeds. There are some farms that have pure dry feeds in there, and they have a feed mill that creates those diets way in advance. And as long as they're dry, they won't rot. But if you're dealing with silages, a week is probably too long. You're probably going to have aerobic deterioration, and that's going to cause some problems that we don't really want to deal with. So last we left off, we were talking about protein and what happens to it. So nitrogen, we said 6.25, rough measure, crude protein. What happens in the rumen is the challenge with our dairy cows. So the microbes can pretty much do anything they want with the protein, and our ability to predict, our ability to figure things out, they can move that protein around, create it, destroy it, do all kinds of things to it. So microbes, we know, we've talked about, they can build protein in the rumen. They can destroy it. They do it for whatever purposes they need to. They'll destroy it. They can rearrange it. They'll dismantle a protein, use the amino acids to create something else, or they can ignore it. So there's a lot of different fates for the protein that enters the rumen, and we're getting better at predicting what will happen in given circumstances, but we still got a long way to go to be as good at protein feeding as our chicken and pig brethren. So because of all the different things and the unknown things and the variables, this is what makes balancing protein for a rumen, it's such a challenge, particularly for a dairy cow, trying to figure out what those microbes are going to do with that protein once they get it in, and we figure it from there. So chickens and pigs, they're balancing the amount of each amino acid that they need on a given day. You basically have a mix of corn and soybeans, and that usually gives us a good balance of our plant proteins. One's higher in methionine, one's higher in lysine. They balance each other out and produce what those animals need on a daily basis. So taking all 20 amino acids and balancing the ration, they've got that down probably the second or third decimal place. So amino acids, essential amino acids are the focus with chickens and pigs. So if we're looking at protein in the digestive tract, if we focus specifically on the rumen in front here, so RR, reticulorumen. This is the reticulum up here. We're looking at the cow from her left side, and then we've got the dorsal sac here, another couple sacs there. This large thing here is going to represent all of the microbes in the rumen as one, as opposed to the bazillions that are in there, the hundreds of billions of bacteria that are there. So what can happen with that protein as it goes in. I'm going to introduce to you 4 different fractions based on what happens in the digestive tract with the cow. Does anybody else talk about this protein this way? No. But I think it's a little easier if we divide the protein up into A fractions, B fractions, C fraction, and the D fraction. Most places only use the letters A, B, and C, and we'll get to those comparisons moving forward. But we're trying to simplify things here for your first pass. If you go on to more advanced things in ruminant nutrition, you'll have to learn the lingo of other places. But I want you to get the feel based on the fate of that nitrogen, that protein that goes in these 4 different fractions. So we said that the microbes can build, destroy, rearrange, or ignore it. So each of these fractions has one of these tasks or close to it. So the A and B fraction are the microbe or the microbial population can see that nitrogen. They can take that nitrogen and make new protein. They can take good protein and destroy it, or they can take proteins, break them down to amino acids and rearrange things. So the A and B fractions, the microbial population is going to have access to that protein and is going to mess with it, rearrange it to suit their needs. So they can build it, they make new proteins to make new bacteria, they can destroy it, they burn it to CO2 and water and ammonia. They can rearrange it, they'll take it apart, build it back, move it, do whatever needs to, break apart the protein, rearrange the protein. They're going to chew on that protein for a little bit and it's going to be altered in some way. The C and D fractions are just going to float in the rumen for however long they're there, 24, 48 hours, and they're going to be unchanged by the bacterial population, by the microbial population. So it's just going to kind of go around, float around, but it's going to leave the rumen and the reticulum, move to the lower tract, unaltered, unchanged by the bacteria. So the protein that goes in is either altered by the bacteria or unaltered by the bacteria. The phrase we'll use is degradable and undegradable. Some people use digested and undigested by the microbes at hand. So if we're looking at our lists, we're going to subdivide what can be altered by the bacteria and what doesn't get altered by the bacteria into things that might be more related to the cow or the chemical composition of what's going in. So you've got your A fractions. Your A fraction is going to be materials that contain nitrogen but are not actually protein. So we abbreviate that NPN, non-protein nitrogen. So this tends to be readily available, highly used, completely altered, used by the microbial population. We have nitrogen in the B fraction that's going to be protein that is used by the rumen microbes. So non-protein nitrogen and then protein is what we'll use in our B fraction. Our C fraction is not going to be used by the microbes of the rumen. So it's going to go in the rumen, it's going to float around, it's going to leave and go to the abomasum, the small intestines, unaltered, unchanged by its time in the rumen. Then we have the D fraction. This is going to be unavailable nitrogen. Nitrogen is not available to the animal, not available to the microbes. It comes in, moves around the rumen, goes down digestive tract, and leaves in the same form it came in. Usually it's lignins and plastics and browning products and burnt protein that are unavailable to the microbes and the cow. So by implication, which fractions here should be available to the cow? A, B, and C. Which ones are available to the microbes? A and B. So where the nitrogen or protein ends up, how available is it, and what form is going to set these 4 fractions? So if we're looking at our A fraction, we're looking at our soluble nitrogen, at least most of it. There's some soluble nitrogen that really is B, it's protein, but we've got soluble nitrogen, we've got ammonia, we've got nitrates and nitrates, we've got probably vitamins with nitrogen in them, we've got amino acids, we've got peptides. So all small molecules that the microbes have ready access to. They can suck those up and turn them into protein very, very quickly. When we're dealing with what ends up in these 2 fractions, we're going to do it by difference. So these are true protein fractions. We're going to figure out, okay, we subtract the soluble out, we subtract the unavailable out, whatever ends up in the manure, what's in the middle is protein, and we figure that by difference. And then we may have guessed already, the acid detergent insoluble nitrogen that we go through an ND, neutral detergent extraction, a acid detergent extraction, whatever residue is left on that acid detergent crucible, that the nitrogen contained in there is considered unavailable to both the microbes and the cow. It's in a form that can't be digested readily and quickly. So if you're a fungus that's got a couple months, you can rip it apart, but that's not fast enough for a growing mammal to live off of. So we're thinking about what's in those fractions. I've alluded to these already. So urea or ammonia is in there. We've got amino acids. We've got small peptides. I think the general cutoff is strings of amino acids that are less than 10 in a row. You've got vitamins going into solution. A lot of them have nitrogen in them. You've got nitrates, NO2, NO3. They're all going to end up in that soluble fraction. If the microbes are given enough time and enough adaptation, they will handle those with ease, and they will become part of the bodies of those microbes, part of the microbial. So the B fraction is true protein that the microbes can get a hold of. They can destroy it, they can rearrange it, they can use it to build more of their proteins. So first 2 are available to the microbes. The true protein in fraction C is stuff that won't be touched by the microbes in the rumen. It's usually based on solubility. It doesn't go into solution easily. It doesn't open up easy or denature easy. So the microbes can't see it, therefore they can't attack it, alter it, rearrange it, digest it, collect the amino acids from there. But once this true protein gets to the small intestines, the acid from the abomasum, the base from the small intestines, all of the enzymes that are present there, both in the abomasum and the small intestines, can digest that protein, can release those amino acids, and then the cow can absorb those amino acids. Unavailable, we've got lignin, usually is our dominant source of unavailable nitrogen. But if we've not handled our feeds properly, especially during ensiling, or I guess if we put up our hay too wet, we'll get that burnt protein as well, where we have amino acids reacting with carbohydrates and you're forming a plastic. The carbohydrate, the amino acid are no longer available. And one of the key ones that gets sucked up in this is lysine. Lysine tends to be very reactive under high temperatures with the carbohydrate. So we're going to lose disproportionately more lysine in this burnt, in this bound protein that that is unavailable both to the cow and to the microbes. So everybody see why I did the 4 fractions that I did. So let's compare a couple of different protein systems. I'm going to suggest that you get a full sheet of paper out or use one of the back sheets on your handout. And if you have line paper that you can turn sideways to match what's up here, that'll make life a little easier for you. So what I'm going to do is create a number of bars vertically going across that are going to illustrate the different naming systems related to protein. So to get started, I'm going to start with a bar here over on the left. That's going to represent our intake crude protein, our intake nitrogen. So this is going to be all of the nitrogen, all of the crude protein, nitrogen times 6.25 that the cow will consume. Then we divide that into different categories depending on how the rumen treats them, the microbes, how they react, how they're digested, where they're available in the body. Everybody ready to go? So in your handout here, I've got the slides that are going to be the definitions. I've got all those definitions on that spot. So if you want to just use the initials, you can refer to those initials in that there. So this is the way I'm dividing it up for this class. We've got an A fraction, a B fraction, a C fraction, and a D fraction. I'm putting them up there that they're roughly 25% each of the intake protein. That is not typically representative, especially the D fraction. It's going to probably be less than 10% of the total bar, but I want to be able to see what's going on. I want you to be able to just deal with the nomenclature at the moment. So the A fraction up top is going to be non-protein nitrogen. Some is very close to protein, peptides, and amino acids. Some of it is not. The ammonia, the nitrate, vitamins are not close to protein. These 2 areas here are true protein, sequences of amino acids that can be digested, broken up into individual amino acids, and then used where they might be. And then D down here, we have bound or unavailable protein. Everybody with me so far? So by definition, the A and B fractions are going to equal the amount that's available to microbes. The A, B, and C fractions are going to be the protein or nitrogen that is available to the cow. The cow has a little bit more availability than the microbes. And that comes back to that anaerobic conditions is going to limit what they can or can't do. So that's to the benefit of the cow if we balance things correctly as we move through. If we take the SIP, soluble intake protein. So SIP is soluble intake protein. That's going to be all of the A fraction and a little bit of the B fraction. There's going to be some proteins that are very readily soluble in that borate phosphate buffer, that artificial spit that we have for the cows. But SIP, soluble intake protein, is roughly equal to the A fraction and a little bit of B. So soluble intake protein. So by definition, our A and B fractions are going to be rumen altered nitrogen. Microbes are going to do something to it, change it some way, shape, or form. The B or C and D fractions are going to be rumen inert. There's nothing that can be done with those nitrogen fractions, those protein fractions by the microbes. So they go in, they float around, and eventually they leave when the particle sizes are small enough. We get into formal ration balancing and different protein systems. We're going to call that rumen altered nitrogen degraded nitrogen. The microbes are going to degrade or alter or use that nitrogen, that protein, in such a way that it becomes part of their bodies. So degraded protein is going to become part of the microbial mass. That rumen inert stuff will be called formally undegraded nitrogen or undegraded protein. Back in the old days, we used to call it bypass. It bypasses the rumen and goes to the lower tract. Everybody with me on that? We abbreviate that rumen degraded nitrogen as RDP or RUP. And those stand for ruminal degraded or degradable protein, depending on if you've got it in the feed, it's degradable. Degraded, you're measuring something post forestomach, you can say it's been degraded in some way, shape, or form. So RDP, for this class, we don't care what we call degradable or degraded protein. RUP, ruminal undegraded, undegradable protein. So if you're in one of the fancy protein systems, you're going to see those abbreviations RDP and RUP. So RDP is that degradable, the undegradable is the RUP. You'll also see alternate systems calling it dip and dip. So as you might be able to figure out, again, we're going to use the degraded versus undegraded, the D and the U. So we have degradable intake protein or undegradable intake protein. So we've got synonyms pretty much running through here and running through here. Is everybody with me so far? Any questions? Everybody caught up? Anybody need more time? So the last is what you're going to see formally from a coding system in the main nutrition balancing programs that are out there. You have the NRC, the CPM, and the CNCPS are the three main rumen models that are floating around the countryside. They're going to divide the protein into the A fraction, B1, B2, and B3, and then the C fraction. So the A fraction, well, I guess I should give you the abbreviations first. So if you're interested, you've got the NRC, National Research Council, nutritional model that's available pretty much free to anybody who wants it. You have the Cornell Net Carbohydrate Protein System, CNCPS, and then the CPM is the Cornell Penn Minor model. So what do we know about each of these fractions? A is pretty much the soluble protein. So you've got all of the A I talk about and a little bit of the B. Then the B's are partly available, partly not available in the rumen. Their availability depends on time. So the longer this sits in the rumen, more of it disappears and becomes degraded. This goes very quickly toward that degraded function. B3, we get more and more resistant, more and more undegradable as we go down. So you're going to have a lot of B is going to end up in the degradable fraction. A little bit of B3 is going to end up in the degradable fraction. And you're probably somewhere half and half on the B2. The C is going to equal the D that I presented to you. So the way I'm presenting over here is we're going to figure out what happens to it, and then we're going to put it into one category or the other. These systems try to figure out rates of passage, residence time in the rumen, how long are these proteins going to stay there. The longer they stay there, the more available, more degraded they become. This is very fast. This is very slow. So any questions on the various fractions? So this kind of lends itself to a point where we talk about the biological value of a protein. Back in the old days, they called it the BV, biological value of a protein. I think I've alluded to this already. So there are two components to this. One is you're asking what source are you dealing with and what's it going into. So what animal is consuming it? So this is part of defining the feed. This is part of defining the interaction. Depending on which animal it goes in, it's going to be slightly different in biological value. So biological value, something greater than 90%, we think about egg or milk protein. And the animal we're considering usually is a mammal, in this case, a cow. So the closer the profile of amino acids is to what it's needed, the higher the biological value. So we get to the small intestines. If we can get the milk, the egg, protein to a mammal's small intestine digested, we're going to have a whole lot of the right amino acids in the right amount. We're going to have very little left over. Anybody here do Legos? Kits and stuff like that? Anybody done a Lego kit? Okay, I have. I've got one in my office. My brother sends them to me on my birthday. I'm not really sure why, but he does. So, when we're building according to the specs, we have very few extra parts left over. That's going to be a high biological value. If you were making these from scratch and you got kits from all over the place, you're going to have a lot of stuff left over. You're going to be less efficient in making things from the pile you have. You're going to have leftovers. That's going to be lower biological value. So down in that 60 to 40% biological value, we have plant proteins. So why are they lower in biological value? Because what a plant needs to live is very different profile than what an animal needs to live. And that's why you're looking at, well, we've got 10 grams of protein in here. Well, what kind? We need to know what kind. 10 grams of milk protein is very different than 10 grams of soybean protein. You're going to have a lot more waste of that protein. Well, I got extra histidine. I don't need that. I'm missing lysine. Things are not going to be used as well as it could be. If you're in the 70 to 80 range, you're dealing with microbial protein. So it's not perfectly like a mammal, but it's getting closer than your average plant. They have the same sorts of energy cycles, same functions of different protein and enzymes, so you're going to get something closer. So normally what happens with our cows is what? They're going to eat plant protein. That protein goes into the forestomach, the rumen and reticulum, and gets altered, messed. The A and the B fractions get lifted up in biological value. That is the competitive advantage of a ruminant. I have microbes that are going to raise the quality of my protein. What if you're a horse? Where's your fermentation occur? In the hindgut, so all the microbes that are formed there are going to end up where? All that improved protein, the microbial biological value, is going to end up on the floor. Now, if the animal turns around and eats that, coprophagy, anybody heard of coprophagy before? They will take advantage of that biological value. The champions of this are rabbits. Anybody here raise rabbits? Ask Professor Hayes about night feces. They have the ability to separate the output, their manure output, into the stuff that's the pellets. Night feces, right? So, talking about protein sources. So rabbits are the kings of eating their own feces, they'll separate it into pellets, which is low protein. Night feces is that high protein, high microbial, and they'll recycle it back through and take advantage of what those microbes can do to elevate the quality of the protein.
That's some real shit right there.
Ha ha ha. So the competitive advantage is we take plant protein, elevate it, rearrange it, chew on it for a little while to make it better for the animal and better match what the animal needs at the small intestine. So that post-gastric fermenters, horses, rabbits will take advantage of that microbial routine by cycling that manure back through them. It's practice called coprophagy. And then there's what the dogs eat on farms, which is a whole nother thing. So, and yes. What? No, not yet. Okay, so I got a quiz for you. It won't take long. I see you're saying it's an email, or did you put it on Brightspace? Okay, I'll get to it. I haven't got to it yet. Put your notebooks away. We got a quick quiz for you. When you're done, you're free to go. If anybody here needs to sign up for advising, we got sheet here. I will have availability on Monday morning and then all throughout next week to get things done for you. If anybody needs to sign up for dry matters, up here as well. I don't know. Good job.
Oh, that's. I guess we'll have to see what he like. Other than contracts, we will do that. Nice. That's crazy. I don't know if you've seen what. I figured you might have seen.